Universal has finally announced all of the details of Dark Universe, and this has instantly become my #1 most excited and anticipated area of Epic Universe. Hello everybody, welcome. Today we are going to be breaking down everything that we know about Dark Universe, from the big stuff to the little stuff to even all the little small details that nobody else is even talking about. Dark Universe looks spectacular. There's just nothing else to say about it. I mean, I could not be more excited for this land. My top level of excitement for the different lands and areas of Epic Universe keeps changing. It's like pole position. It just keeps changing because I get so excited about one and then something else comes out and it just keeps changing. So originally I was super pumped about the Wizarding World and Celestial Park, and then my least excited land was How to Train Your Dragon land. Like, I just really it wasn't on my radar that much. I was kind of like, cool, nice little area maybe for kids. And then they released all the information about How to Train Your Dragon land, and I was so pumped. I was looking at it thinking, I think this is my #1 land now. Super Nintendo World was always going to be a favorite of mine, but I have to say, this Dark Universe announcement and all of the details that are there, it's immediately #1 on my list. Like, I could not be more pumped. I think the ride, which we're going to talk about, is going to be, I mean, that is a triple A list. That is like going to be one of the top rides in Orlando. It just looks so exciting. Can't wait to get into all the details on what that ride entails, but man, I am pumped about it. So we now officially have confirmation and all the details on 4 out of the 5 lands in Epic Universe. We've done videos about them. Check them out below. The only one we're waiting for now is the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic. But as of this announcement, once again, just saying that in all the materials, all the new Dark Universe announcements, again, it's saying opening in 2025 instead of summer 2025. So we're definitely getting that early opening. I'm excited about that. Again, we've already said it in other videos. Check them out. But you know, we're looking at maybe an April timeframe, maybe May timeframe, maybe some previews earlier in the year. So I'm excited. It's coming. We're less than a year out. I mean, we're talking, you know, maybe 10, 9, 8, 7 months away. I mean, I'm getting pretty pumped. So let's get into it. Dark Universe, formally announced now, Darkmoor Village. It just looks so cool to me, this dark, shadowy village. I think even in the daytime it's going to look amazing. But Darkmoor Village, the lore of this place is essentially that all of the different monsters of the classic Monsters universe all their stories have already been told. Everything from the movies, everything that you've seen has already happened, and the result of all of that happening is this village. And this village is supposed to make you really feel like all these monsters really exist, and they exist in this Darkmoor Village space. So I think it's a cool concept of the way that they're sort of bringing that together, which I'll talk about in one of the restaurants. You can kind of see how they've tied all these things together, and it's actually a cool concept. But I think it's really exciting because we're going to see a lot of different characters. And this is really what we've been waiting for. This is a celebration of over 100 years of classic Monsters legacy. We've been getting it at Halloween Horror Nights and in different places, but I think this is kind of the culmination of that. And if you're a fan of Universal Monsters, I don't know how you can't be excited for this. And the buzz about this place really starts as soon as you hit the portal. I mean, as soon as you enter the portal, there's this like crackling, bright electricity coming straight from the portal and then like shooting all throughout the land. There's all these like, I don't know, Tesla coils and things that are all situated through the land, and lightning is just shooting through them all the way up into that sort of marquee manor, the Frankenstein's mansion, if you will, and all that crackling energy at the top right there. It just sort of runs through the entire land. It's building all that dark energy up. I mean, I just really love it. Again, I think at nighttime it's going to be so cool, but I even think during the daytime you're going to be able to see that electricity flowing through. So the look and feel of Dark Universe is just phenomenal. We've got this sort of like dark stony village. There's a cool cemetery where you can actually, it looks like you can actually hang out in the cemetery, take pictures in the coffins. And I feel like a lot of these lands at Epic Universe have this sort of like symbol, this sort of thing that draws your eye, this main iconic structure. And you've got like the Mead Hall, for example, is what's in How to Train Your Dragon land. And over here in Dark Universe, you've got this awesome, like iconic Frankenstein's mansion, his manor there, and that's just gonna, I think, just take your breath away as soon as you enter into the land. You're gonna see that, it's gonna draw your attention, it's huge, it just looks awesome. Then one of the cool things that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is the Catacombs. I've seen a little glimpses here and there of some of the footage and some of the pictures about these catacombs. I feel like that might be an actual cool place where you can go into, kind of like a nocturne alley, like kind of go down into these catacombs and explore. Maybe it's a cool place like Camp Jurassic. I'm not really sure about what it's gonna end up being, but it does sound like it might be something you can explore. And then right in the center of the town, you've got this well, this sort of like well that's like brimming with all this cool like red lighting and energy, and this like fog is just pouring out of this thing. I really want to see that at nighttime. I think it's going to be cool. I keep wondering if there's going to be like non-stop fog effects throughout this land, kind of like they do with Halloween Horror Nights. Probably not going to be on that scale because that might be a little bit too much fog for the daytime, but I do think there's going to be some, and I'm curious as to see how much there's going to be and how spooky they're going to make the atmosphere during the daytime versus nighttime. I do know there's some slight changes between day and night. There's 6,500 different lighting elements and custom lights that they had to create for this place. So, I mean, aesthetically, this place is going to be amazing. As we know with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge over in Hollywood Studios, cool landscapes and the way the place looks is really only one part of the equation. You really need characters. You need people to interact with. You need actors, if you will, or team members that make you feel like you're part of some sort of story unraveling. Now let's talk about some of those characters that you're gonna see in this particular area of the park. So they're gonna be actual formal meet and greets, and there's supposed to be characters roaming through the land. Again, don't know if all the characters that are roaming the land are the ones that they've called out, or if there will be also characters sort of walking around, doing different things, kind of like Halloween Horror Nights. Let's just go through the list. The list of characters that you're gonna be able to see in this land is crazy. So first and foremost, we got Frankenstein's monster and Bride of Frankenstein. You're gonna be able to see both of them in a meet and greet situation, which sounds really awesome. So if you're looking for a meet and greet up close and personal, those are two awesome characters. But we're also getting Ygor and the Invisible Man. And I don't know for sure if Ygor and the Invisible Man will be formal meet and greets, or maybe they'll just be locations where they kind of hang out periodically. You can get photos with them. Not sure, because we don't have that information. But then there's going to be other characters sort of roaming, maybe in some of the like in the tavern, there's going to be a monster hunter. And the monster hunter is part of the Hounds, which is basically a group of monster hunters. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Then there's going to be at least one musician, probably more than one musician, but they're going to be kind of roaming around playing music, which I think will be cool, kind of like a bard. But then we're also going to get to see and experience a lot of other monsters too. We don't know if that's all the ones that are going to be roaming around or meet and greets, but we know for sure that throughout the attractions in this particular land, you're also going to get to see the Wolfman. You're going to get to see the Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, which there was a rumored water ride for Creature from the Black Lagoon, which definitely was not announced, so it's possible they still plan on expanding. I know there's space to expand, and they could potentially expand and do a Creature from the Black Lagoon, some sort of water ride, but that is to be announced. We don't have anything on that. So, but you will see Creature from the Black Lagoon in some of the attractions. You're also going to get Phantom of the Opera, which I feel like people sleep on Phantom of the Opera. They don't. I feel like from a Broadway perspective, they don't sleep on him, but I feel like from a Monsters perspective, Phantom doesn't usually get a lot of love. So I think it's going to be cool, and there's a really cool organ, which we'll talk about. But Phantom of the Opera is going to be represented. We're also getting Dracula, obviously, and the Bride of Dracula will actually be in there. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because not a lot has been talked about with Bride of Dracula. And then there's one particular monster we haven't heard anything about, but I'm getting some clues that maybe we'll actually get this monster. It's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We've seen Dr. Jekyll and Hyde in some of the Halloween Horror Nights things in the past, but we haven't heard anything really about him in this dark universe. But there's a clue that I want to throw out. We'll talk about it in a minute. That makes me wonder if we might actually get Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in some form. Let's jump into the attractions, and we're going to start off with the craziest attraction, like my number one attraction. I think my number one attraction in the whole park that I am dying to try. And that is the Monsters Unchained Frankenstein Experiment. Oh my goodness, this attraction looks off the chain. So it starts out, we've got Dr. Victoria Frankenstein, who's living in this giant mansion, the Frankenstein's Manor. She's basically the great-great-grandchild of Henry Frankenstein. And she's basically continued on all these experiments that have been going on from the Frankenstein family. Now, we don't know for sure if Victoria Frankenstein is a good person or a bad person, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But we do know that she's doing a lot of experimentation, and she's captured all the classic monsters. She's captured them all, and essentially Dracula is I guess either been captured or not been captured or is going to escape or something, but he's basically going to wreak all kind of havoc. And this is supposed to be the most advanced technology, advanced ride ever for Universal, so I'm really excited about it. It's going to be, from what I can tell, it's going to basically be a combination between a couple of rides. One, Forbidden Journey, and two, Alien Encounter from old school Disney over in Magic Kingdom. Alien Encounter, man, that's a classic. I loved that attraction. It was so cool. So Alien Encounter and Forbidden Journey, those two big rides there. It's going to be a combination of those two things. So we do know that the actual ride vehicle system itself is pretty much the same, sort of like reticulated arm thing that they use for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Forbidden Journey ride. But there are a few differences. And you can actually see this ride vehicle in a couple of places. It's actually shown on the desk of one of the team members there, one of the designers. He's got a model of the ride vehicle right there on his desk. You can kind of see it. It also shows up in a few different shots of the Dark Universe in the Frankenstein scene, and another scene you can actually see the vehicle. And a couple of things about that vehicle that are interesting is, one, there are no sort of like sidebars or vertical ceiling above or around you. You've basically got a 360 panoramic view pretty much of what's going on this attraction, versus in Forbidden Journey you're sort of closed off because it uses those like rotating screen effects, and if you kind of can see left and right, if you look, it kind of looks, you can tell the magic is sort of ruined. So they try to like sort of block you off so you only have this space that you look at, but they're not going to have that restriction in this particular attraction, which means everything all around you, above you, I think even below you, to the sides, will actually be immersed. It's an immersive experience, and so we're not going to have little tiny windows of rotating like screens, but we're going to have giant immersive screens. Think like Spider-Man when you're sort of like going up, and when you're sort of rising up and the building is fading away and you're going up in the sky and everything around you is like screens with also some practical effects built into it. I feel like it's going to be something like that. It's going to be ginormous spaces. And then on top of that, we know it looks like there's going to be animatronics and physical worlds sort of seamlessly integrated with a lot of the screens, sort of like, again, Spider-Man, Transformers, where it sort of tries to seamlessly blend real world with sort of the screens and projections. Supposedly, these screen effects are going to be crazy good. Now, we actually have our first look at an animatronic as part of this ride as well, which at first glance, it kind of just looks like a visual effect of some kind with Wolfman. Sort of Wolfman doing these like motions and all this lighting and fog effects. It's kind of blurry purposely because they don't want to give it away. But that's actually looks to be potentially an animatronic as part of this particular attraction. And I gotta tell you that the movement of this animatronic is insane. I mean, it's like Navi River Journey. My first thought was Yeti. I was immediately drawn to like the giant Yeti on Expedition Everest, which by the way is twice in this reveal that I actually thought about the Yeti. So I saw this giant like animatronic looking thing. It might be small, but it might be giant. I don't know, but it looks really cool. The movement, I'm just like, wow, if that's an actual animatronic, which I'm pretty sure it is, it's gonna be knock your socks off awesome. And if it's anything indicative of what else is going to be in that attraction, it's going to be crazy. The other thing about the ride vehicle system is there's their over-the-shoulder harness, which, by the way, Universal doesn't use the the harness very often. Only in rides where you're literally going to be slowly rotating almost or all the way upside down and kind of sitting there for a bit is when you see those shoulder harnesses. Think of a Velocicoaster. It's got the lap bar system built into it, and you're upside down a lot, and they're using the lap bar. So if there's an over-the-shoulder harness, you can think this ride's going to be pretty intense. This isn't going to be just the Forbidden Journey. Forbidden Journey is kind of a, you know, you can get motion sick on that ride, don't get me wrong. A lot of people have problems with motion sickness, but it's not intense. I mean, it's just kind of like a, you know, ride through. It does kind of hang you sort of upside down a little bit when you get to the Whomping Willow, but it's not really crazy intense. It's not spinning around a lot. It's not doing, you know, loops or anything. And so I'm just thinking with the shoulder harness there and how they're talking about this ride, this could be pretty intense. Also notice there's no 3D glasses. Again, kind of potentially a giveaway that there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to be looking at that aren't just screen projections. So I'm actually glad there's no 3D glasses, but nothing there. And plus, if you're doing a lot of movement upside down and hanging, I mean, those are just going to fall off your face, so they really can't do that. Now let's talk about the organ, the awesome Phantom of the Opera organ. I mean, that thing sounds awesome. I don't know how big the organ is going to be, but it says there's 14 different fire spouts that shoot out of this thing, 3-foot tall flames in perfect concert with music that is happening, with the organ being played. I'm assuming we're going to see Phantom there, but I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a scene in the ride, which it looks like it is, or maybe it's part of the queue in some way. I'm not sure, because if it's part of the ride, I don't think it's going to be just like you fly by this thing in like 3 seconds and there's all this cool stuff happening. I feel like you're going to be like kind of in front of it. So again, Forbidden Journey, where you kind of like slow down for a bit and experience what you're seeing there. Either way, 3-foot flames times 14, cool organ with music, Phantom of the Opera style probably. Sounds awesome. And then the other thing is the 4-dimensional nature of what's going to be happening because you are actually going to be getting effects on you. You're going to be getting things like, it says monsters breathing on you, and I'm assuming maybe like specific scents are going to be happening, or maybe you're even going to be like getting touched in the back with little things. I'm not sure, kind of like Tough to Be a Bug or anything else where it has those little pokey things. I don't know, but it sounds kind of cool. But again, I'm thinking Alien Encounter. If you ever, I mean, even Stitch's Great Escape, I guess, if for, you know, you could think of that with the chili dog smell where he burps on you. But I remember Alien Encounter, which is like, I remember the monster coming up to me and it was like licking the back of your neck and you could feel it breathing on you, and it would actually like push your shoulder restraints down, like it was like touching you. It was scary. Alien Encounter was scary. I mean, it's to me, even today, if I wrote it, I think it would be scary. So, I don't think that this ride is going to be, I mean, they don't say family friendly. I mean, and the height requirement is 48 inches on this thing. So, I don't think it's going to be for the faint of heart. I'm excited for this thing. It's going to be awesome. A couple of other things to point out is in the one Frankenstein scene, I noticed a bunch of different characters there, and I was kind of trying to hone in on those characters to see who all was in there, Wolfman and etc., Frankenstein's monster, obviously. But I also saw this sort of like ghostly figure look like they were flying through there, which I think is the bride of Dracula. I think that's who that character is. You also see Ygor sort of in the background there with the goggles. And then also you see Phantom. I'm pretty sure that's going to be Phantom right there. So there's a few characters there that are kind of in the background that they haven't really talked about too much. Now there's also some interesting footage around the statues. And if you notice, there's actually 2 statues where they sort of have like half of their face is sort of grotesque and the other half of the face is more normal. Same thing with their like shoulders and skin and arms and stuff like that, which I think is interesting. And they're sort of, both of them are in front of Frankenstein's portrait there. But there's a scene where it actually shows a woman's face and it flashes very briefly to this like grotesque version of this woman's face. And I keep trying to figure out what that's trying to tell us. Is there something interesting there? Is it just representing, is it Victoria Frankenstein? I can't really tell who it is. But what is that? Who's that character? Is it just trying to tell us that it's sort of reflecting the good and evil side? This sort of tug of war of good and evil between this particular character, Dr. Victoria Frankenstein? Is it potentially, could it be something else where it's sort of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of thing? So maybe this character is going to be a Jekyll and Hyde figure, or maybe it's Victoria Frankenstein who, yes, she's Dr. Frankenstein, but maybe she's also a Jekyll and Hyde type character. I don't know. It could be really cool. Let's move on and talk about the next cool attraction, the Curse of the Werewolf. There is actually a Curse of the Werewolf 1961 movie that has the same exact name, but from what we understand, this actual attraction is built off of the 2010 or the original version of Wolfman. So it kind of follows that storyline of the Wolfman movie, where you've got Maleva, which is basically the guild leader of these mystics, sort of welcoming you in. You go to this cool, like, secluded little, like, forest camp of these wagons and things, and there's sort of like these, like, tents set up, and almost like a carnival atmosphere, it feels like. But you quickly learn that you have the Curse of the Werewolf, basically, which is like you're gonna turn into a werewolf. You have the curse. You're screwed. And then, lo and behold, there's the Yeti from Expedition Everest. There's a giant Yeti. I mean, am I the only one that thought Yeti as soon as I know I'm not the only one, because a couple people have already commented on my previous video and one of my posts. They were like, did you get the Yeti vibe like I did? I'm like, yes, 100%. Got the Yeti vibe from Expedition Everest. It's exactly what I thought as soon as I saw it. This is going to be a family friendly. Despite the fact that there's cool werewolves and things, it's supposed to be family friendly, so more of a lighthearted experience. And the way I'm thinking about this ride is kind of a combination between Guardians of the Galaxy, Cosmic Rewind, and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and Toy Story Mania. And this goes 37 miles an hour. It's about 2 minutes in length. So if you compare that with Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train goes 34 miles per hour, and it's about 2 minutes and 50 seconds in length. So it goes a little bit faster, but it's a little bit shorter of a ride than Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. But I feel like it's gonna be about the same level of intensity. But it definitely does leverage sort of these spinning ride vehicles. They're not going to be probably spinning nearly as much, or definitely not without as much G-force as Cosmic Rewind. And what's really interesting about those ride vehicles is there is a forward and a backwards facing position, very similar to Toy Story Mania. That's why I said Toy Story Mania, because the ride vehicle looks very similar. It's two people on each side facing opposite directions. Obviously that spins throughout the ride, so it's not like I'm always facing backwards or I'm always facing forwards and I'm kind of screwed. But what I find is really interesting about this is it's possible that there's two different experiences on this ride. Not just one singular experience. Based on if you start in the forward-facing or the rear-facing position, are you going to get a different experience, maybe even a slightly different storyline with regards to the things that you're going to see as you're going through this coaster? Or is it going to just be replicated? So everything that you would see backwards, you also would see forwards, and everybody sees pretty much the same thing. I don't know, but it could be a really cool thing, kind of like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which, if you've ever ridden that ride, if you focus on specific characters throughout the ride, the entire ride, you actually get different stories that are happening. So by the time you've gone through the whole ride, you've gotten a different story. So that could be a cool thing that they're planning. Now let's move on to the first restaurant, the Burning Blade Tavern. It's a little bit smaller than the other restaurant, less seating, but so very casual, quick service type dining experience. It's basically the tavern hall where these monster hunters, the Hounds, hang out and regale you with all the tales and have all the trophies and all things about all their monster hunting days. You're gonna have things like burgers and wings and brats, pretzels, different beverages, a nice quick service hangout spot, grab some food and get going. But the landmark for Burning Blade Tavern is what I'm really excited about. I mean, that is is an iconic windmill from the classic Monsters movies. Is this burning on fire windmill, that this windmill will be bursting into flames every 15-20 minutes or so. A few times an hour it'll actually burst into flames. And they have they have two levels of fuel that they'll use to actually ignite this fire, one for daytime and one for nighttime. But basically think of this as the big giant dragon in Diagon Alley over in Universal Studios. It's gonna be the same thing every certain amount of time. So basically I'm expecting a lot of people standing in a small space with their phones out, waiting and waiting and waiting for it to catch fire so that you can get a quick video and a picture of it, just like in Diagon Alley. Now the next restaurant location is Das Stakehaus, and it sounds pretty cool. It's basically built over top the catacombs. Like I said earlier, there's a couple mentions of catacombs. It's built on top of all the catacombs for all of these vampires. So essentially the story is that there are vampires below this actual restaurant, sleeping. They're in their slumber, and all their familiars, which familiars are basically the people that take their caretakers of the vampires to keep them safe, during daytime hours or times when they're in sleep for long periods of time, they basically protect them to make sure nobody goes and messes with their coffins. So they're protectors. So they're caretakers, their familiars are basically running this restaurant. And all over this restaurant are all of these portraits of all the adventures that the vampires and the monsters have undergone over the years. And it actually depicts the monsters as like the heroes, like all these things that they've conquered and all these great, awesome things that they've done, which is cool because again, it just brings all the monster lore of all the different monsters universes together into one space, which I think will be really neat. But what I find interesting is when I look at the rendering, it almost feels like a full service restaurant. It's a larger location than the other restaurant. There's a lot of sit down tables, but it almost feels full service because it looks like there's kind of a server there like handing people their food. Now, there are quick service locations where you order it and they just bring it to your table. Heck, even places like Blaze do that nowadays. You just order and then there's a little coaster and they deliver it. But it almost gave me full service vibes, but it does definitely say it's a quick service venue. So it doesn't look like it's gonna be an expensive sit-down restaurant. It's gonna have things like burgers and ribs and sandwiches, but also it's gonna have maybe some kebabs, and definitely it's gonna have steak on a steak. It's gotta have that. So sounds pretty good. Again, a couple of quick service locations right there in Dark Universe, which is nice. 2 different quick service locations in one land, I think is awesome. There's also a small little sort of like booth location called Dr. Lacey's Cottage, which is an homage and a reference to the Frankenstein movies. Essentially, the Lacey family, Frankenstein's monster basically stumbles over to them and they find him and they basically show him kindness for the first time. So essentially, that's sort of an homage to that. It's just gonna be a quick grab and go. It's gonna have cinnamon bread. It's gonna have ice cream and twisted taters. So some of the favorites and things of Universal. Now let's talk about the Darkmoor Monster Makeup Experience. If you remember, over in Universal Studios, they were actually testing a makeup experience for monsters. And it was called the Monster Makeover. There was something like 37 different designs to choose from. I think they added a few more for Mardi Gras. And it was like between like $25 and $125 depending on what you got. But I think they were definitely testing it out, but they did close it early. So I don't know if it went well. So I'm not sure how this is gonna go, but this is a lot more involved and I think a lot cooler than what you would have gotten at Universal Studios. So even if it didn't do very well at Universal Studios, I think it could potentially do really well over in Dark Universe for a couple of reasons. One, it's an experience. It's actually a specific location that's designed in a certain way with the chairs. You can see the ambiance of that. And they're gonna have these basically professional makeup artists transforming you into a monster of some kind. So think very much similar to Bibbidi Boppidi Boutique, or the Pirates League that they had over in Magic Kingdom. Obviously, monsters, not dressing you up as a princess or a prince or a pirate, but those were extremely popular. The makeup experience is at Dr. Septimus Pretorius's old lab. He was basically a mad scientist who essentially was responsible for sort of pushing Frankenstein back into continuing experiments when it started to move into the Bride of Frankenstein times. He's this mad scientist, but it's basically a space that's been converted from this old lab into this makeup experience. But what I find interesting, which I think is really gonna kick it up a notch, is this doesn't look like it's just makeup or tattoos, temporary tattoos and makeup. It looks like there's also gonna be apparel and props and gifts and things that you can also buy. So you can do sort of the full outfit. It looks like there might be some costumes. So for example, if you want to be Wolfman, they're going to do, your face up and make you look like Wolfman, but then there's also going to be clothing, maybe just like some ripped costumes or whatever, maybe dress you up like Dracula that you can actually go along with, maybe even have some props that sort of make you feel like you're one of the characters so that you can actually go out. And this isn't just for kids, it's for kids and adults, so that you can actually go out then and walk around the Dark Universe feeling even more part of this awesome, nefarious dark land as one of the monsters. So I feel like it's actually gonna have a bigger draw than maybe what was over at Universal. So that one ended early at Universal. I'm hoping that more people take advantage of it over here in Dark Universe so that it stays, because it sounds like a really cool concept. And that's all the information about Dark Universe. Are you as excited as I am? I mean, this place looks amazing. I could not, again, it's number one on my list now. Like, maybe once Harry Wizarding World stuff comes out, I'll change my mind, but I just don't think so. I think it's Dark Universe all day long. And now the only thing that I'm the most upset about is the first day in Epic Universe. I don't know where I'm gonna go first. What is your favorite land? What are you most excited about? Anything else I missed about Dark Universe? There's probably some Easter eggs in there that I didn't catch, but I'm pumped about it. I hope you are. Be sure to check out our other content below, all of our breakdowns, talk about how Universal's getting bigger. I mean, they've had that land for a while, but they're actually thinking about maybe doing some stuff with it. So check out those videos, and be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment below, let us know what you think, and hit the notification button so you know when our next video drops. Until we see you next time, the noble way is the easy way. Bye-bye, everybody.